let's kick things off. Let's talk about the additions of James Carpenter and Jamon Brown. As we're recording this, we don't know the exact financial terms of their contracts. Carpenter got a 4-year deal. Jamon Brown got a 3-year deal. So I will give you the floor and allow you to share your thoughts on these two signings.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic about these moves. Jamon Brown more so than James Carpenter. Brown was a guy that, back in November when the Rams let him go on the waiver wire, I was kind of hoping that the Falcons would get involved, kick the tires on it, and perhaps they even tried to, but the Giants scooped him up. They had the higher waiver claim. And, he went to New York and kind of solidified that offensive line a little bit towards the end of the season. Him and Will Hernandez. You really saw the running game get going with Saquon Barkley, and that became the identity of that football team. And, I would have thought the Giants would have kept him long term, but then, they made that move with the Browns to get Zeitler, and it made more sense that Brown wasn't going to be in the picture anymore with Hernandez being a recent draft pick on the left guard spot. So for me, I think Jamon Brown has some upside. He's only 25, 26 years old. I thought in 2017 with the Rams, he was kind of coming into his own a little bit, and kind of him and Rob Havenstein, both guys drafted in 2015, kind of were solidifying that right side. And I think, again, Jamon Brown, I think his best football is ahead of him. So I'm encouraged by this move. I think this does kind of mean that either Fusco is going to be cut or, well, I think that's probably the only option now. Again, I don't know how his recovery is going as far as the ankle injury is concerned, and that has something to do with it because his contract would be guaranteed in the event that he's still hurt. But right now I'm penciling in Brown as the starting right guard. I think, too, we should wait on the financial terms, but that's kind of where I'm at with Brown. Carpenter, I'm not as high on. I think, for me, I don't think there's as much upside with that signing as there is with Brown. But at the same time, I'm kind of telling myself that when Andy Levitre came over here, he was, entering his year age 29, 30 season, and he kind of had a rejuvenance, when he came to Atlanta. So maybe something similar is in the cards with Carpenter. I think kind of evaluating his time in New York, you do have to take that with a grain of salt. There was literally no talent on either side of him on that offensive line in New York. That won't be the case in Atlanta. He will be next to two Pro Bowlers in Alex Mack and Jake Matthews. So again, similar to Brown, I'm kind of penciling in Carpenter as the left guard going into 2019, especially considering, they gave him a 4-year deal now. I know that doesn't, mean that he's going to be here for 4 years, but it kind of tells you that they do like him enough to give him that 4-year term. So, not as high on this one, but at the same time, I'm optimistic, and I think, he could have a resurgence here in Atlanta.
Yeah, look, I don't think these moves really move the needle in a major way. Like if you were asking me to compare them between sort of looking at these guys and comparing them to sort of looking at Brandon Fusco a year ago, I think I'd be splitting hairs trying to come up with reasons why this is going to work out in some major way versus that Fusco deal. I think they're all about the same in terms of their overall talent level. They're serviceable to, on a good day, above average starting guards. But, I think really realistically, that was probably the best case scenario for the Falcons this offseason, given sort of the limited talent pool in free agency, given how much money is being thrown around for, a lot of players that aren't necessarily high-end players, that if the Falcons are going to sign guys, and we'll find out sort of what the price of these guys, but I'm assuming it's not, more than $5 to $6 million a year, and ultimately it's going to boil down to sort of their guaranteed money to indicate, sort of what this realistically is. But I think for me, at least, I think these are decent additions for the Falcons at left guard and right guard. I feel like both of these guys don't really solve the Falcons' problem, but as we've talked about a number of times, like, that wasn't really necessarily a realistic option in this free agency class. Like, the best case you would do is get a stopgap for a year, and hope that buys you time to find more of a long-term solution, to get somebody that you could plug beside Jake Matthews at one of those guard spots or wherever, and that guy could wind up starting for you and be a high level to good guard for 5 or more years. That's not going to be these two guys, but I think in terms of plug and play guys that are experienced, that fit the Falcons' outside zone blocking scheme, and at least present the idea of being physical. Although I think people sort of look at how big these guys are, particularly Brown, and think, oh yeah, these guys are going to be these road grading maulers, and they're going to really upgrade the run game. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but obviously the Falcons aren't worse today than they were on the offensive line, and at least they have bolstered competition. And depending on how much they paid for that competition, I say that competition in the sense I expect both of these guys to start week one at left guard and right guard respectively, with Meredith and with Carpenter and Brown. But I think they've upgraded at least the quality of player that they have on the roster. We'll have to sort of see whether it bears out to see a significant improvement for the offensive line this season. But at the very least, they're not going to take a step back. So I can say that. And if they wound up signing both of these guys to relative bargains, if the guaranteed money for Carpenter's in the single digits, if for Brown, if it's for less than, $4 or $5 million, then I think those are some pretty good bargains for the Falcons. And that's fairly smart spending for the team. And